surviving in the Alaskan and Canadian wilderness where men dare not venture. If you see one, you might be blessed, you might be cursed. But don't let them look you in the eye. Or they'll fucking kill you. That seems to be one thing that the myth lives consistent on. Looking at them in the eye is an act of aggression. They don't seem scared of people, just disinterested. The rangers tell us hunters have seen them, and the natives say looking at them makes a man go mad. But they never go near cities. The forest is their home, and they can have it. The closest real thing I have seen to it are the renderings of the Irish great elk, but even it is too small. I could understand how some think, if they see it, it's a very large moose. But the tusks, the antlers, and the call is anything but.
Seems weird, right? Because I don't know if you can verify these dates, but 5th of June, 10th of November. The animation means there. Alright, how the number is animating a bit. Because, right, the 25th of December on both calendars.
Fuck it. I'll tell the Walls of Jericho story. Walls of Jericho is a canyon in northern Alabama, located right on the state line between Alabama and Tennessee, and is formed from a river that turns into a waterfall at the top of the canyon. It's a beautiful place, but you have to hike down into the canyon, to then hike up to the waterfall. It's honestly a mild hike, going down isn't too hard. But with a lot of gear, and lazy females, it's pretty tiring. Before we hiked down, we decided to sleep near the cliff edge that drops off onto another cliff face, etc. We find a great spot that already had a fire pit dug out and a lot of good wood still in the pit, like someone had collected way more firewood than they needed and just left it there. This spot is barely off the road, and it took probably 10 minutes walking there, so we assumed they just packed up and left. It's not super pertinent, but there was also a whole change of clothes, female, that we found in the fire pit. Anyway, spooky starts at night. We're sitting around the fire, drinking, smoking, talking, when we hear a scuffle in the little valley below us. Girls get scared when Josh starts talking about the wild animals and how this and that totally lives in these woods. Whatever man, we're people with weapons and tents, nothing will fuck with us, and that night it was like everything was just fucking with us. Sleeping arrangements: leave Chris, previous story, sleeping in my tent, no homo, and we're just talking about what we would do if X showed up or we got attacked by Y, then we'd do this, when this fucking weird ass howl goes off in the valley below. It was like a mix between a person angrily crying out of frustration and a straight up wolf howl. That was spooky, but the quiet afterwards was deafening. No more little yips from foxes, no more bugs chirping, no hoots. Just dead silence. We're waiting when it howls again. As an onomatopoeia it sounds like a. Chris just says, "Man, that coyote sounds weird, but I've heard plenty of coyotes in my time and that did not sound like a simple coyote." When I tell him this, he just says fuck it, grabs the flashlight, and goes out into the darkness, leaving me to fumble around for my knife when that same howl goes off again and I hear Chris yell, "What the fuck is that?" I rolled out the tent to see Chris standing at the edge of the cliff looking down into the valley with the light. As I'm walking up to him, he turns off the light and says, "Look down into the canyon and keep looking until I turn on the light." I did as he said, and when he turned on the light all you could see were dozens upon dozens sets of reflective eyes looking back at us. Now I know animals will watch you in the dark. And it's not uncommon to see this with spiders in tall grass. But this was a cliff face with a clearing beneath it. And dear God, it got quiet. I'm saying so quiet we could hear one of the couples trying to bang at the other end of camp. So quiet that when the next howl went off we almost fell backwards off the cliff. See, before the howl was down in the canyon, but each one was getting progressively louder until the last one sounded like it was at the edge of camp. It was so loud that the rest of the group either woke up or stopped fucking and started to pour out asking who was yelling like a retard. I remember that question echoing in my head. Who the fuck is yelling? Not. What the fuck is that? Everyone's gathered around the smoldering fire, asking WTF is going on. Josh's dumbass says, it's Mehem, sure Josh. It's a coyote that sounds like a married man of 10 years found out his wife had been cheating on him for 11 years, GTFO here with that shit. Tell them about the progression, how the last sounded right behind our camp inside a field of chest-high grass. Everyone starts getting freaked out when Chris swings the flashlight over towards the grass, just like before. The edge of the darkness is full of reflective eyes much larger than down the cliff, except these are moving in and out of the light as if they were fading back to pop out at another spot. Everyone collectively WTF is that shit when Josh gets the fantastic idea to throw a rock into the brush. All the eyes go back and the howl returns, this time right on top of us, all around us, and we all instinctively got back to back brandishing our variety of weapons. Mainly machetes, but everything just stops and the normal sounds of nature return. We immediately rearranged our camp so all tents were next to each other and as close as they could possibly be, but it didn't seem like anyone wanted to sleep. Everyone was sorta wired from the noise. But we all went back to our tents and tried to sleep. It wasn't until later that it got weird again. I had fallen asleep and had a dream about this creature attacking our camp. Fucking shit up generally, but I never saw the creature in my dreams since it was always just barely out of sight. I get shaken awake by Chris, whose face was inches away from mine, but before I could say anything he put his hand over my mouth and pointed to outside the tent and cupped his ears. I really wish he hadn't woken me up. Outside it sounded like something with heavy feet was dragging something else. All around the perimeter of our tents. Sighing and wheezing. It would stop at each tent and make a light scratching noise on each one. For those who don't know, light scratching on a tent door is directly the same as knocking on someone's door. It's a sign that says, hey, someone's out here. Open up. And whatever was out there was doing it on each tent, circling around and around, still making those wheezing noises and knocking on everyone's tent. Chris motions towards me, pantomiming a slash across the back part of my tent, and I knew what he was trying to do, cut through the tent instead of fumbling with the zipper to surprise whatever was out there. Being in a situation like that really makes you feel like drastic action is your best bet. I dunno why, but we tore through the back of my tent like it was butter. This time, instead of a howl, there was a lot of wheezing like someone constantly out of breath. We both hit the 2 exits to camp, down the cliff and in towards the brush, and to this day I still don't believe the shit I saw, and I only saw the back half. It was like a hunched over old lady, covered with tattered black cloth. One arm was out and looked like bone wrapped in paper skin. Behind it appeared to be either really dirty trash bags or some kind of tail it just dragged along behind it. We both started screaming as loud as we could, and something seemed to match our voices as the howling started up again, this time in the direction of the brush, right where the hag had been. Shit was piercing and long this time. Extend the human AAAOYG part more and that's pretty on point, forcing us to cover our ears. And then it was over. Everyone woke up again, scared again, and the decision to go home at dawn was quickly reached. We left that morning but returned the next day with more, stronger weapons and no females. Man, we thought the night had been scary. and they say hindsight is 20 out of 20, but when we returned to the same campsite we found the whole place destroyed. The fire pit had been dug out and thrown over the cliff, solid slab of concrete, all the firewood was splintered, and the burnt change of clothes was gone. Fucking weirdest part was you could see where our tents had been. You could see all our footprints, but there was a long ass groove in the dirt that went around the tent clearing and led directly into the brush. Yet, comp died so had to switch to phone. There's not much left, but there was one last thing that felt very scary, movie tier and legit creepy, so I'll share that. When we were talking to other campers, there was one couple who was in the same horse pasture as us. They had been down in the valley when we were camping at the cliff's edge, and they had heard the same shit we did, but the super creepy thing was what they said about the one night in between when we left and came back. That night they said they heard an animal limping around the edge of their camp, and while they said they didn't think much of it, there was one huge detail that stood out. They said it must have been really windy because branches kept bumping into the tent and scratching it.
Yeah. I don't know, there's something I missed in here. I don't think so. It's a fun thing. Fun thing that just happened.
Weird things you've seen.
I didn't do
All
that.
right. Feel a little silly even writing it down, but here we go.
I can't open
My
that.
supernatural encounter. Be me,
I also can't.
17. Dad loves to hunt. Always go with him. We've had a real bad string of not getting drawn. After another year of not getting drawn, Dad just buys some expensive tickets to hunt on local res. Kind of a splurge, but it was on my dad and he could afford it. Super beautiful land. Keep spotting deer all over. No elk, only got tags for elk. I'm okay with it. My favorite part of hunting is just walking around and spending time with my dad. He was a surgeon when I was a kid, so I spent a lot of my childhood not really knowing who he was. Really just came home to eat or sleep. Anyway, we walk around all week, and it runs me ragged. Dad says he's gonna take a nap in the shade. Tells me to keep an eye on the meadow, elk wander into them all the time. Just chilling out in the beauty when I see some movement. Peek at it through my scope, just another herd of deer. Take my finger off the trigger. I know, I shouldn't have even put it on the trigger before I knew what I was looking at. I'm safer now, and just watch M through the scope. Few minutes later, deer scatter. Just fucking bolt. Absolutely terrified. Weird, but neat. Maybe another predator is nearby? Not too worried. My gun is honestly stupidly big, even for elk. Mostly just curious. Wait to see more movement. Eventually, I see something move across the clearing. Look through scope at it. It's just another deer. Looks a little bit funny, but not like Fallout bad. Just a little gangly. Moves a little funny too. Deer are real graceful. This thing just kind of bumbles. Honestly just assumed it was